My name is Sammantha, and my workshop is going to be the exploration and facilitation of mentorship in student organizations. And just a very brief introduction of myself. As you all know, my name is Sammantha. I've been a leader of a couple organizations on campus and been involved with mentorship in several ways, but some of the most important ones, I'm currently a PAF. I've been a PAF for a year. I participated in the first cohort of FIRE, so when FIRE first started, and then I've been a team leader ever since. And I also served on the steering committee after my first year. I also am currently in LIFT, and I created the Lift Off Mentorship Program. And my goal for that program was just to find a more formal way to connect students so they can discuss different internship experiences. And just another tidbit about myself, I'm a strong believer of this quote that says, if I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants. And that's one of the big reasons why I'm really passionate about mentorship and why I've pursued it so much during college. Great, so there are a couple goals for this presentation. We're going to learn why is mentorship important, analyze whether you all have had any meaningful mentorships, plan what are possible ways to possibly encourage mentorship in your organization, and just check in with each other and kind of practice this method of a way to check in with other people that can develop when you have mentorship partnerships with people. Great, so now we're going to look at the importance of mentorship through through literature. And I analyzed 3 different works of literature. And in one piece of literature, the authors discuss the importance of mentorship when it comes to Mexican youth in California. Through mentorship, mentors provide moral support. They advise them on how to deal with potential challenges ahead that they have dealt with, and it allows the mentee to refine certain skills necessary. So quote I took out of this was that key adults in the community all play a very important role in helping to determine their overall well-being and future life chances. And in the second piece of literature, this literature focused on understanding why mentors exist in an organization. The authors state that mentors can provide 2 different types of relationships: sponsorship and coaching, and/or counseling and functions. And one quote that I got out of this was that these functions are important social support that facilitates mentees' professional and personal development, as well as positive work behavior and attitudes. And in the last piece of literature that I explored, the authors were exploring the impact that mentorship has on young tenured professors. The authors conclude that young tenured professors do receive positive impact from mentorship. And the quote that I got from this literature was that mentoring scheme had positive impact on participants' perception of their own ability to function and to perform as members of the academic community. Mentees can obtain resources and establish collaboration. So while all these literatures focus on different experience, we can see the benefits of mentorship that people experience. So now the importance of mentorship at Harvard. The Undergraduate Council just released their 2021 spring survey report where they recommended policy changes after collecting around 500 responses from the student population. These are just 2 quotes I found that touched on the importance of peer connections during our time spent virtually. So the first one said, one of the things that I found helpful was the entryway meetings, which provided informational PowerPoint presentations about the blocking process, as well as an opportunity to talk about the PATs who had already gone through the process. What I found concerning was the struggle of choosing blockmates. Due to this year being entirely remote, it was really difficult to decide on which friends would be my blockmates, and even more difficult to make friends to begin with. And the second quote read, it was harder to form meaningful friendships this year, especially for those of us who were remote for half of the year. Found the panels hosted by upperclassmen and entryways helpful. For future first-year students, these Q&A events about the blocking process could be helpful. Video presentation that can be easily accessed could be helpful too. So really encourage you all to go read that survey and just also look into the data surrounding FIRE and why FIRE exists, because all of them exemplify good mentorship experiences that occur on the campus. So now before we move on to discussing potential plans and tips for mentorship, I just really want to encourage some reflection. Personally, as a junior, most of my relationships with the people in these pictures started as some sort of informal mentorship. So for example, Carolina Jimenez, who is pictured at the center in the blue shirt, she was the co-executive director of the conference I was a part of. So as a first year, she was just my director. But when I stepped into that role, I continued working with her and another co-executive director because of the affiliation to Latinas Unidas. So that's us in the center, and I was actually just with them for 2 weeks. And so now we're very close friends, so that, mentorship kind of fostered into something else. And while we're primarily just very close friends right now, there's still some mentorship that occurs. So now I want to ask you all, can you all think of a mentoring relationship that turned into a friendship or lasted for some time? This could be informally or formally. And maybe you could spend like 2 to 3 minutes talking about this. You can share in the chat or unmute if you want to.
I can definitely jump in and say fire was huge. I mean, yeah, you were fire, but that like mentor, it was like more of a formal relationship, but remained informal afterwards, and kind of like created a cycle of mentorship where I wanted to help Higley students. And I think that it's done the same for like a lot of other fireflies.
Thanks so much, Aisha. And I definitely agree. If you look at the bottom left picture with the bear line, Heyun and Lizette were both, well, especially Lizette was somebody that I met during the fire program, and she was a giant mentor, but now she's a very close friend. Heyun I met through fire steering committee as well, and also a very close friend. Heyun was my fire mom. Olivia said HSA was a big one for me. And I think especially at Harvard, where there's so many mentorship experiences and where so many people take up leadership, it's very easy to just start something that's more formal and then eventually have it be more informal. So sometimes I hear a lot of stories of paths being not close to their pathies, but then eventually being very close when they meet in other capacities. Does anybody else want to share before we move on? Okay, I'm going to move on. Sorry, I keep losing my voice. And now for this portion of the workshop, I want to touch on some ways where mentorship can be informally encouraged. A lot of these are ways that I myself have found mentorship and how I kind of try to foster it when I was a president and a co-executive director of the conference. So the first one is check-ins. In a lot of our organizations, we have a lot of work to do. And at times it can be very difficult to balance like work commitments with community bonding. But I found a great way to just attempt to foster friendships and mentorship is just by checking in with board members. So this could be done like how we do it in section at the beginning. You can just have a brief check-in, or you can try to figure out a person's like hobbies, interest. So one of my favorite check-ins is, you were to be a kitchen appliance, which one would you be and why? You can find out a lot about a person through that one. And another one is community bonding. So at times, an organization is just work focused. So for example, a conference, and it may be helpful to institute community bonding events that facilitate casual networking. So when I was a co-executive director of a conference, obviously the goal is to do the conference, but we really wanted to encourage community bonding because not we're going to drive each other crazy. So we would have like a Christmas exchange, we would celebrate birthdays, and at the end of the conference, we were supposed to have a dinner, but we usually had a dinner. Board structure. If an organization is particularly dependent on younger leadership, it is helpful to create leadership positions that promote mentorship. So under a branch, institute a younger student to help with the work. And obviously this can't be done in every organization, but if your organization is large, it may be helpful. So in the LIFT organizations, we have 9 different vice presidents. And under each branch, there's an associate vice president role. And this is just to encourage students to start learning about LIFT, and hopefully in the future, they would transition to leadership. And just connect, if you're the president, ensure that you're looping in others and working alongside your counterparts, not leaving them behind. Really trying to bring people alongside you and not behind you. And so kind of more ways that require a bit more time. A retreat. So obviously this looks a little different online, but set aside a night, maybe a weekend, a couple of hours to engage directly with your board. And during these retreats, discuss the mission of the organization and think about together the reasons why you're in the organization. Set aside moments to engage in fun activities. Ideas include playing a card game, bonding games, etc. We had a retreat online for Latinas Unidas, and it was like 2 hours on a Friday night, I believe. And we just encouraged like personal sharing, talked about LU's mission, asked students why they were in the organization and what the organization means to them. And we also played a game at the end. It was really fun. Transparency. Plan events where you are honest about your experiences at the institution. And this may be especially important depending on your organization's mission. Be open to sharing these thoughts with outside members, share your contact info, and encourage networking. So for example, with Lyft, our organization is to allow students from Latinx backgrounds to be more represented in fields where they're not. So when we have panels, we're often transparent about how hard it is to even get your resume in, how hard it is to connect, and how sometimes awful companies tend to be with communities that we're a part of. So being transparent about that is really important. And then the last way, which is maybe a last step or a last resort, is just to create a formalized mentorship. But there are a lot of different mentorship programs at campus, so this would be a last resort. Think critically of whether your organization would benefit from a Big Sip, Little Sip program. This may be useful if your organization is focused on a project, career exploration, or if you think that your members would really benefit from this community bonding. So like with Liftoff, I just identified the need, and then I sent a Big Sip, Little Sip sign up, and then I paired everybody and then like sent out resources. Obviously, it was more work with that, but that was such a long time ago. And now checking in with each other, like I mentioned, a very important portion of just being in different friendships and relationships at Harvard, especially when it comes to organizations, is just learning from each other. And I found that a lot of my different mentorships was because people just asked me how I'm doing. And instead of like being like, yeah, I'm doing okay, I was actually transparent with them. So for the next remaining time, like 6 minutes, I want to encourage breakout rooms in groups of 2 where people have 6 minutes to actually check in. You can ask any of these questions or you can ask your own ones, ideally 3 minutes each. Okay, 1 minute left. So I'm just gonna wrap up. So I really hope that you all got to learn something from each other. And next time somebody asks you, how are you? If you trust them, obviously we don't trust everybody that attends Harvard. Maybe like try to get to learn them more, especially if you're a leader in an organization. Maybe in the chat, since we don't have time, you can say how the presentation went for you. But thank you so much. Welcome any feedback. Yeah, thank you so much.